Vishayan abhisandayam Yasha aishvaryam evavam Archadau archayedyomam Pritagbhava sarajasam Vishayan abhisandayam Yasha aishvaryam evavam Archadau archayedyomam Pritagbhava sarajasam Vishayan abhisandayam Yasha aishvaryam evavam Archadau archayedyomam Pritagbhava sarajasam. Okay, please chant. Vishayana Visandayam Yasha Aishwaryam Evavam Archadau Archayedyomam Pritagbhava Sarajasam Vishayana Visandayam Yasha Aishwaryam Evavam Archadau Archayedyomam Pritagbhava Sarajasam Vishayana Visandayam Yasha Aishwaryam Evavam Archadau Archayedyomam Pritagbhava Sarajasam. Okay, so we go word for word. Vishayan, sense objects. Abhisandaya, aiming at. Yashaha, fame. Aishwaryam, opulence. Eva, indeed. Va, or. Archa ado, in worship of the deity, and so on. And so on. Archayet, may worship. Yaham, he who. Mam, me. Pritagbhavaha, a separatist. Saha, he. Raja Saha, in the mode of passion. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The worship of deities in the temple by a separatist, which with a motive for material enjoyment, fame, and opulence, is devotion in the mode of passion. Purport: the word separatist must be understood carefully. The Sanskrit words in this connection are binadrik and pritagbhavaha. A separatist is one who sees his interest as separate from that of the Supreme Lord. Mixed devotees or devotees in the mode of passion and ignorance think that the interest of the Supreme Lord is supplying the orders of the devotee. The interest of such devotees is to draw from the Lord as much as possible for their sense gratification. This is the separatist mentality. Actually, pure devotion is explained in the previous chapter. The mind of the Supreme Lord and the mind of the devotee should be dovetailed. A devotee should not wish anything but to execute the desire of the Supreme. That is oneness. When the devotee has an interest or will different from the interest of the Supreme Lord, his mentality is that of a separatist. When the so-called devotee desires material enjoyment without reference to the interest of the Supreme Lord, or he wants to become famous or opulent by utilizing the mercy or grace of the Supreme Lord, he is in the mode of passion. Mayavadis, however, interpret this word separatist in a different way. They say that while worshipping the Lord, one should think himself one with the Supreme Lord. This is another adulterated form of devotion within the modes of material nature. The conception that the living entity is one with the Supreme is in the mode of ignorance. Oneness is actually based on oneness of interest. A pure devotee has no interest but to act on behalf of the Supreme Lord. When one has even a tinge of personal interest, his devotion is mixed with the three modes of material nature. So chant the verse again. Vishayana bisandayam yasha aishvaryam evavam archadau archayedyomam pritagbhava sarajasam. The worship of deities in the temple by a separatist with a motive for material enjoyment, fame and opulence is devotion in the mode of passion. So before we go into today's verse and purport, I want to do a recap of the verses that were spoken in this particular chapter, which is called The Explanation of Devotional Service by Kapila Deo. And at the beginning, the chapter starts with Devahuti asking her son, she said, I've heard now about the Sankhya and all of this and about yoga, but now I really want to hear about bhakti. And then she says in the verse number 3, she says, but could you also describe in detail, and for me, but not only for me, but for the people in general, she says like this, can you describe in detail samsara, the repeated cycle of birth and death? I would like to hear about this. And then in the verse number 4, she says, but I would also like to hear about kala, your form as eternal time. And then she addresses Kapila Deo as a spiritual master. She said, you are able to illuminate ignorant beings, and I feel great compassion for them and also for my own benefit. Please speak. And then in verse number 6, Maitreya then is speaking to the Kurus, and he said that Kapila Deo, he was moved by the great compassion and pleased by the words of his glorious mother, and thus he spoke. He spoke in the verse 7, then he said, Kapila Deo said that there are various ways of devotional service and that various paths, and that they are they're dependent on the qualities that the executor of devotional service has. So they are dependent on the qualities of the performer of devotional service. And then in the verse number 8, he explains the devotional service in the mode of ignorance. And today's verse and purport, they speak about devotional service in passion. And today's verse said that if you worship in a temple and you're a separatist, means that your desire is not dovetailed with the desire of the Lord, and you have this hidden agenda while you do the worship. You want your own sense gratification. You want a little bit of fame and opulence. You want to draw from the Lord a little bit of His vibhutis and use them for your own personal aggrandizement. That is devotional service in the mode of passion. So then in the purport, two important terms are defined, one being having a separatist mentality, as we read and I just explained, but maybe one of you would like to also define what does it actually mean to have a separatist mentality. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, many times we come to the temple and we're like, yeah, Lord, you're great. I love you very much, but I have this problem and I'm difficult and some difficulties I'm dealing with, and could you please like arrange a little bit more so I get some peace of mind, or so that my family will not suffer, so that, you know, my mother will not get ill and things like that. And it's, it's separatist mentality in this sense. Prabhupada is saying to draw from the Lord as much as possible for our own sense gratification, which basically also means that I have this, like I said, hidden agenda. I want a little bit of Krishna's vibhutis, and I go to the Lord, you know, and I praise Him, but secretly I'm like sucking the vibhutis out of Him and making them my own, presenting them out as my own, and taking the applause for it, so to say. And then the second concept is the concept of oneness, which is also has to be understood, not in the sense of Mayavadi philosophy, not in the sense of merging with the world, with God, becoming one in that sense, but oneness of what Prabhupada is saying. Yes. Yes, one with the Krishna's desires. Yes, we become the walking, talking, and sitting Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, I think it's verse 54. Arjuna is asking Krishna, so how does a person who is above the modes of material nature, which we're going to speak a little bit about, at least one of them today, how does that person walk, talk, and how does he sit? And then in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is explaining that speaking is the most important. How you recognize a saintly person is when he opens his mouth. It is not going to be anything that is not connected to Krishna. So, and speaking is the most obvious as well. No? So, and then Prabhupada is saying how a devotee should not wish anything but to execute the desire of the Lord. We should want to become this. I once heard Bhaktivinoda Tirtha Maharaj say that we are meant to become saintly people. That's why we came to this movement. This is, it's a side product, but this is what will naturally happen if we are developing our love for Krishna. This is it's a natural side product of this process. So yeah, today we are talking about the mode of passion. There is a chapter in Bhagavad Gita, chapter number 14, which describes the three modes of material nature. And there are 4 verses in that chapter that describe the birth, the death, and the activity in the mode of passion, and what is the result of that kind of an activity. So verse number 14:7 says that the passion is born of unlimited desires and longings, hankering. And then the verse 14:15 says, that describes the death in the mode of passion, says that if you die in passion, you then take birth among fruitive workers. Usually we hear if you're a passionate person, then you stay on this earthly planet. And this earthly planet is meant for fulfilling our material desires. Also to finding our higher purpose, but mostly it's like this. We got the chance to act independently. And then 14:16 says the action in passion results in misery. Anybody has an idea why, or anybody has an example of an action in passion, or share an example from their own realizations? Why would passion? Because passionate people, they're quite successful, no? On the material platform, they looks on the outside, they got it all. But Krishna is saying that the action in passion results in misery. How comes?
I have a funny example, but it's not so spiritual.
You want a microphone to say it, or how we do? I'll try to repeat a little bit. And then see.
It just,
Yeah,
when I was in my 20s, so I used to work hard, and I used to party hard as well. So, running gun, so out there, doing everything and thinking I can achieve everything. Work hard and also, get drunk and so on, do it all with full passion, go for it, 100%. And it worked for a little while, but then at one point, the Lord made this happiness, total happiness, into misery. I became very sick, with different things, but just, cancer and other things that one can understand. So it's like it was, at the time it was a good idea, and nobody got harmed, so to say. It was like, okay, this is fun, but actually it was very miserable afterwards. So it was the example of when I read Word of Passion, it was like, you think I'm just going to enjoy, it's fine. But you're so miserable, you can barely move. So that was
Okay, so Gopi Gita shared a personal example that she was a hardworking girl, but she would also want to enjoy the fruits of her labor in partying, and then afterwards your body got really sick, right? From the hard labor, I guess, and from the sense gratification that followed also. So yeah. This is one example, and it's. I also have a similar realization about it. That when you're in passion, it's like you can have so many things, but your mind would spin around and around and around this one thing you don't have, and then you have to go for it. And when you get, because your mind will go, if only I had this, then I would be happy. Gopi Gita said, you are happy for a while, but then the reactions, they come, no? So if I only had this, then I would be happy. And then you have to go for it. And once you get it, you're happy for a while. But then your mind will go, but if only I had that, then I would be happy. And then you have to go for that. And it is perpetual, it never ends unless you can break through that cycle, no? So then, in the following verses, 14th chapter Bhagavad Gita, 14:21, Arjuna asks, then, what is the behavior of one who has break the cycle, who transcended the modes of material nature? And Krishna is replying, he's giving an answer from verses 22 to 25. I'm going to read his answer. And he says that one who has transcended the modes of nature is he who does not hate illumination, attachment, or delusion when they are present, or long for them when they disappear, who is unwavering and undisturbed through all these reactions of the material qualities, remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the modes alone are active, who is situated in the self and regards alike happiness and distress, who looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, who is equal toward the desirable and the undesirable, who is steady, situated equally well in praise and blame, honor and dishonor, who treats alike both friend and enemy, and who has renounced all material activities. Such a person is said to have transcended the modes of nature. So basically what Krishna is saying, that he's speaking about equality and somebody being equipoised. Is equanimity, no? Yeah, equality and equanimity. And which basically means there are no ups and downs. It's not a sinusoid, it's a straight line once you reach there. And I was thinking, what does a straight line on electrocardiograph mean? Death. It means you're dead. You're not living anymore. And it's true. But how death? Now we're going to go into this, what kind of death this is. One of the first seminars I heard from Bhakti Swami was a seminar entitled The Art of Dying. And this seminar was a response to all of these yogis and gurus coming from India and teaching in the West, teaching the Westerners how to live. You know, they had the seminars, the art of living, the art of effortless living, the art of, living like this, the opulent living or whatever they had. And he said, and then I was thinking, that's no way for a guru to speak. And he wanted to give a seminar on the art of dying. And he said, he took the frame story of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he said, Srimad Bhagavatam actually is explaining how to die. So we have Parikshit Maharaj, who has been bitten by poisonous snakes, and he has 7 days to live. And he decides that in these 7 days, what he wants to do, he wants to hear transcendental topics. He don't want to do anything else, but to prepare himself to die. And this is why we came, in this movement. We came here to die. We did. We want to die materially. We want to, all of our conditioning, we want it to die off. Because why? Because it brings misery. Because it's false. Because it's an illusion. It looks real, it seems real, but beyond all of this, underneath all of this dirt, when all of this flushes away, we are actually eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. We are not going to die once we die, ever. No? We're going to be happy, and we're going to understand everything perfectly. We're going to have, this equanimity and equality we just read about from Krishna's answer to Arjuna. So, yes, and then in the next verse 1426, Krishna is explaining. He says, Mamchayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. He says that if one engages in full devotional service, and he is unfailing in his execution of devotional service in all circumstances, then at once he will transcend the modes of material nature and attain the level of Brahman, which is Krishna then being the source, the level of Brahman. It's a pathway to reach him. So Srila Prabhupada, before he came to the West, this was in 1956, he actually established like a society called a League of Devotees. And what I'm finding interesting, in the verse we're reading and in this 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita that explains the modes of material nature, is actually how the behavior of a devotee is stressed, the character and the behavior. Because we often say a devotee is somebody who engages in devotional service. But what actually Srila Prabhupada established at that time, way before he came to the West, he said that in his society he wants Brahmins, and he defined Brahmins that there are those who are in the mode of goodness, and there are those who are, he's saying, like good and intellectual people. No, this is the words he's using. They're good, which is a quality, which is a value, no? And intellectual. They have a sharp brain. They think about things that are going on around. And so in the purport, in Srimad Bhagavatam 5:18-12, Srila Prabhupada lists 26 qualities that a devotee should have. And he's explaining, this is actually from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada's explaining how Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami is saying that only by the presence of these 26 qualities can you recognize a devotee and distinguish a Vaishnava from a non-Vaishnava. He says like this. If somebody has these qualities, that's a Vaishnava. Otherwise, a devotee in the process, in the making of, but not a pure Vaishnava in that sense. So I wanna read slowly through these 26 qualities, and if you will, you can close your eyes and look into your hearts while I do. I did that yesterday. I can't close my eyes right now because I'm gonna read, but I did that yesterday. It's funny, with these 26 qualities. There's a devotee family in Croatia, and they have 2 boys. And the mother one time was explaining to me when the small boy was young, very young. I don't know how, he could barely read that young, maybe 6, 7 years old. And a really smart boy. And then he was reading through these 26 qualities of a devotee. And he would go like, nah, I don't have this one. Nah, I don't have it. No, this one I don't have it. Oh, he was going like this. And then he said, oh, this one I have. But my mother really doesn't like it. Because that one was, the devotee does not eat, does only eat to keep the soul and the body together. So my mother doesn't like that one. But I mean, even now he's a teenager, he's still like a peculiarly austere eater, which is strange. Teenage boys, they eat like, but he's really an austere eater, so it's interesting, yeah. But don't feel bad about, we all have all of them, I want to say that, but in different degrees. They are inside of us. Sometimes, we act in fullness of our capacity within certain of these qualities, and sometimes, in a very, very minute particle. So, but just, it's good to look inside our hearts here and there and see, what is the goal? What does it mean to be a saintly person, and where are we going at? Where are we headed? Okay, so Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami lists the 26 good qualities of a Vaishnava. He is very kind to everyone. He does not make anyone his enemy. He is truthful. He is equal to everyone. No one can find any fault in him. He is magnanimous. He is mild. He is always clean. He is without possessions. He works for everyone's benefit. He is very peaceful. He is always surrendered to Krishna. He has no material desires. He is very meek. He is steady. He controls his senses. He does not eat more than required. He is not influenced by the Lord's illusory energy. He offers respect to everyone. He does not desire any respect for himself. He is very grave. He is merciful. He is friendly. He is poetic. He is expert. He is silent. So we do have them, no? We do, but we don't. Some But it's like for every one of them, you could say, okay, I have a little bit, but, still working on it, still getting there. So this is the goal. This is where we had it. And I wanted to tell a little story from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam about a Vaishnava who had all of these qualities, who was a saintly person. And so that we can, it's good to tell stories, I think, at least for me. I like telling them, I like hearing them, because they're very relatable, more than like philosophical discussions or facts or something. They're very, very relatable. I know reading Ramayana, I was so impressed by the character of Sita. So impressed. And then you're like, when you're impressed and then when you contemplate and you automatically you wanna follow, no? You want to become like that person a little bit. Like Prabhupada is saying, Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita, whatever a great man does, a common man follow. And that's why that's why Srimad Bhagavatam, it's like, it's a treasure, it's a full treasure. Everything you're looking for, it's there, and it's relatable through these stories. So in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a story about a Brahmana who was a childhood friend of Krishna and who went to Gurukul together with Krishna. This Brahmana was named Sudama, and he was extremely, extremely, extremely poor. And he had a wife who followed him very nicely, but because they were so poor, they could not dress properly, they could not eat properly, they were both emaciated, and the wife, naturally, she wasn't worried about herself so much, but about her husband, because when you don't dress well, when you can't eat well, then you get sick. And so she asked her husband, she said, would you please go to Krishna? He's your friend. He lives in Dwaraka in great opulence. Could you please go and just beg a little bit something so that we don't suffer like we do? And Sudama, he had no interest in doing that, begging from Krishna, but he had interest in seeing Krishna. He was like, oh, this is a great opportunity for me to go to Dwaraka, and I really want to see him. So then he asked his wife, because it's a Vaishnava etiquette that when you go to somebody's house, you bring a gift, no? So he asked his wife, do we have something that I can bring to Krishna? And they didn't have anything. So she went out begging, and she was begging from the other poor brahmanas in the neighborhood, and got 4 handfuls of flat rice. I don't know if anybody tried this flat rice, but yeah, it's very dry and very chewy. It's it's nutritious, it's rice, but it's not really a delicacy. It's just it's food for the poor. So he got this gift, no, to bring to Krishna, and his wife would wrap it in a torn cloth and give it to him, and then he started his way. He went from South India all the way up to Dwaraka. And then he got there, and he entered the palace of Krishna, and Krishna was sitting on Rukmini's bed, and when he saw him, when he saw his childhood friend, he stood up, he welcomed him, he said, Swagatam, Suswagatam, he washed his feet. And then Krishna would put the charanamrita of this brahmana, he would put on his head. And he would sit him down and bring him fruits and something to drink. And Rukmini was there, she was fanning this brahmana with her own chamara. And everybody in the palace were, estranged. What's going on, but they thought, it's Krishna's behaving like this, it must be a really special soul that he's behaving like this. And then they sat down, Krishna sat the Sudama Brahmana down, and he asked him, he inquired, are you married? How are you doing? And how is life for you? All of these things, and they chatted a little bit, and Krishna recalled, he said, remember when we were students in Gurukula, And our teachers sent us out to the woods to collect the wood for the fire. And we went out, and somehow an unseasonable storm started. Yeah, that is out of season. Storm started. And it was raining so heavily for a whole day and a whole night. And we couldn't return. We couldn't see anything. We were scared. We held hands. We didn't know what to do in the middle of the woods, little boys. And then in the morning, when they didn't return, then the spiritual master sent him himself and the other students. They went looking for them. And when they found them, he was very pleased with them. He said, "You disregarded your own comfort just to do service, to render service to your guru, and I'm very pleased with you." And he gave them blessings. And so they were recalling these pastimes. And then Krishna said, "Oh, you must have something for me." "No, you came for it. You must have. What do you have?" And Sudama Brahma, he was a bit embarrassed to present this flat rice. So he had it on him, but he was a bit embarrassed about it. And Krishna knew this. He could see his heart, and so he snatched it from him. He took this flat rice and started eating. And he ate with such a delight that Rukmini had to stop him. Krishna was like eating, and he said, "This will not only satisfy me, this will satisfy the entire creation." Rukmini had to stop. He said, "You had enough. What you just took, with this, it's a load full for this Brahmana." And then, so the Sudama Brahmana stayed there for a night, and then in the morning he returned home, totally forgot to ask him for a little bit of wealth. Totally forgot about it. And on the way home, it's a long way from Dwaraka to South India. So on the way home, all he could do was think about how he was sitting with Krishna, how beautiful Krishna is, how they were talking, how they mentioned this story and that story. It happens to us also sometimes. No, we have a conversation and then it just rolls in our head for a couple of hours, that conversation. So that encounter, made such a big impact on the consciousness of this Brahmana that he was just in it for the whole duration of the journey back home. And when he reached his village, he found no huts, like muddy straw huts, but they were big palaces. And people were beautifully dressed and decorated and having beautiful bodies. And he wondered, it feels like I reached the right place, but is this really my home? It doesn't look like my home. So when he came to the place where his humble dwelling used to be, there was a huge palace. He was looking at this palace like, what is this? And then his wife came out, and she had a beautiful body. She wasn't, skinny anymore. She had a beautiful body and a beautiful sari and beautiful ornaments on her and a big smile on her face. And they greeted each other, and he was still like, what's going on? And then as soon as he stepped inside this palace, which was now his home, his body changed. It became youthful and beautiful and dressed in beautiful clothes and ornaments. And then he looked around, and it was the pillars and the walls, they were bedecked with jewels, and there were marble floor, and there were beds that had silken sheets on it. They were white. It says white as a milk foam. And the bed, the legs of the bed, they were made from ivory, and there were golden ornaments on it. And Sudama Brahmana could not believe his eyes. I just went to see Krishna. I didn't even ask him for anything, and this is what we got in return. The whole village got this incredible opulence. But what he understood was, Krishna gave this to me as his prasadam. No? This is Krishna's, it's not mine, it's his prasadam. So I better treat it in this way. I better respect it in this way and treat it in this way as his prasadam. So I'm inspired by Gopi Gita's classes. I wanted to do a little exercise today with you, if you will. I brought pieces of papers and my daughter's crayons. so that I know I'll get it back. Yes,
I wanted to ask a question.
of course.
The 26 qualities of no possessions, but that answered it very nicely. It's like, oh, what? Should we have nothing? No? Like this, but if we understand that it's all Krishna's
Yes,
property.
yes. That's why the stories are, the stories are the greatest teachers, really. I've been meditating on this sentence from Srimad Bhagavatam. It's from a purport. And you would say, like, a sentence you just read and you go through, no? But I've been meditating on this sentence for like 2 weeks now. And it goes that Krishna's mercy is the birthplace of everything wondrously appreciable. Krishna's mercy is the birthplace of everything wondrously appreciable. And this exercise I want to do now, it will, hopefully will help us see it. Because, yeah, you can, slowly. I'll still speak a little before we do, but you can pass it around. Which subtle entity of ours is entangling us in the 3 modes of material nature? The ones that makes us false identify with this body, with this mind, with this emotions, and it's entangling us over and over again, is making us trapped in this. Which of the subtle, which part of our subtle bodies is doing this? Is causing our entanglement is in the material modes. Yeah, but more maybe false ego, I would say false ego. And I wanted to ask you before we start this, what is the ugliest characteristic of the false ego? There are no false and right answers to this question. Whatever you say, it's good. What is the most ugly manifestation of our false ego? Greed, yeah. We spoke about that today, no? From passion, then greed is born, yeah. Wanting more. Wanting more of things, wanting more for ourselves, no? Greed, that's a good answer. Somebody else want to answer? Yeah? Yes, to think ourselves superior. She said to put others down, to think ourselves superior. That's also quite, wow. But we have it, no? Hatred, yeah. Rejection, no? Hatred. Yeah. True. Something else? Envy, true. Jealousy and envy, wanting things that others don't have. And envy and thinking oneself better than others, I think that they're connected in some way. Because we think, we deserve better than others, and then therefore we envy, Yeah.
I think
Illusion. Yeah.
Otherwise we believe it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. We're fooled by it. Yeah, we think, yeah. Yeah, true. So, want to hear what I was thinking? Because we didn't mention. I was thinking that the ugliest feature of our false ego is sense of entitlement. Yes, because if you think about it, like we feel entitled to so many things. We feel entitled to breathe fresh air. But there was a devotee from Hong Kong a couple of months ago here. She does not take fresh air for granted. No? We think we're entitled to have a warm meal every day. But if you ask a member of a sub-Saharan tribe, they do not take a daily meal for granted. We think we're entitled to have a warm shower, to have drinking water. We think we're entitled to have a good digestion, to have friendly relationship, to have a kind husband, beautiful wife, and so on. So many things. We think I'm entitled to get good education. I'm entitled to be understood. I'm entitled to be able to express my emotions and so many things. And all of this is actually nothing but the grace of the Lord. And so this exercise is actually good. I did this exercise with Urmila Mataji once. We did it in a Vaishnavi retreat in the mountains. And I find it such a powerful exercise because we're going to write down a list, but just for ourselves. You don't have to show it to anybody, read it to anybody, just for ourselves. We're doing this, a list of all of the things we feel we're entitled. And we're doing this in order to look at the list and realize that it is all Krishna's grace. So that we can have appreciation and gratitude for fresh air, for a meal a day, for a kind husband. So 5 minutes we take? Yeah? Okay.
A list of what we believe we're entitled to.
Yeah.
What is the German word for entitled?
Berechtig. Yeah? Yeah. Sounds right.
Yeah, it sounds like.
I could go on and on and on. But we said 5 minutes, so yeah. Thank you for being here today. This is what it is from my part this morning. If anybody wants to say something and share something or read, one or two things you feel like sharing with us from your list, please be comfortable and free to do so. I'll pass the microphone if somebody wants to. Yes.
I found it interesting how one can separate the different points of entitlement into different areas. For example, we spoke about this, I feel entitled to have this or this good in my life. So we have this material aspect. I feel entitled. I need to have beautiful clothes because I'm in the position of serving here. So I need to look pretty when guests are coming, for example. Or and the other area is like about characteristics one feels entitled to in the seva one is engaged. So with my seva I have a certain position, and in this position I feel entitled to give advices, to judge others, to give commands. And another area is maybe about the spiritual life. Like I feel entitled that I have the right to live in a temple, that my spiritual life has a strong fundament, and I have the best support from outside. But actually that's not all right. It's just like a great, great mercy if we have this strong support. And yeah, one can go on and on. Especially like spiritual life is so interesting. Like when we come to the temple, and after a while, how we have our expectations and take many things for granted. So it's like I like to compare to the times I lived outside. I lived on my own. How different it was, and how hard it was to keep up like a spiritual standard. Because here in a temple we have a natural standard we just need to follow. But outside you have to create the standard for yourself and to maintain it, and it's difficult.
Just one comment. I fully agree with the standards which are so difficult to keep up when you live by yourself. I fully agree.
Funny one that came up, well, not so funny, was the right to choose my own husband. Because I sort of, as everyone here knows, I was raised and born in England, but with a traditional Indian family. And I was raised and told that I should marry an Indian man. No, just an Indian man. It was thought was very strange, so. And when it came up later, as a child, you think whatever, but as it came up later, I found a husband, or a potential husband within the movement, who I met in a temple, and it was basically thrown out of the house, and it was like a very heavy issue. My father was always reasonable, so I could speak to him, and I remember saying, "But Papa, I don't understand. Why should I marry someone based on the color of their skin? What is this, And I remember he looked at me, and he was a very honest man, and he said, "Well, actually, I'm also not quite sure, but this is the way we do it, this is how it's done." And it wasn't just that he had to be Indian, he had to be a certain caste, he had to be from a certain village, even though we don't live in villages anymore. He had to be from a certain place, and so it was a lot of... And it was a time where, just as you mentioned other examples, where people may not take for granted that they have their own meal. It was a very special element which enabled me actually to marry Ramananda. And this devotee wasn't the right person, of course, and he didn't have so many devotional qualities in the end, but like it was a strange thing to understand of entitlement, because I thought I was entitled to have this, to choose my own husband, but everything in my circumstances was pulling me in a different circumstance, and so only, I guess, shelter in the Lord brought it to one way or the other. My Guru Maharaj did tell me it was good that I waited until I had a devotee who would bring me closer to the Lord. But it's a strange thing, because actually when I look back, it was my 25, sort of this age period until 30 was very intense, because one didn't understand devotional or the spiritual aspect, as well as the dharmic duty to one's parents. Sorry. So yeah, the right to choose anyone. I'm gonna cry. No, it's not super nice. It's like more super scary.
Yeah, I mean, we take our life for granted. We have the right to live, but actually it's all mercy from Krishna that we exist. Could you imagine that we cannot exist? Maybe that you're like nothing? He gave us our lives. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and he gave us this form of life in which we can have this sort of discussions and help each other elevate ourselves until we become pure, saintly, following the footsteps of Sudama Brahmana and so many others. Great examples from our scriptures. So once again, thank you for being here, sharing and listening. Vanchakalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.